If you're one of those out there that are overwhelmed by the 50 tubes of paint you have and you don't even know where to start, this video may really help you winnow down your paint colors and also learn not just the how, but the why you might want to do that, because I recently had the best aha moment from this classic book written by the late Robert Wade, and we owe such a debt of gratitude for this amazing book. I highly do recommend it, but I'm going to share my favorite tip and favorite aha moment I had about paint colors and mixing paint colors and not getting mud. And I'm going to share with you my 10 paint colors that I paint almost 95% of all my paintings with. And I have curated these 10 colors over 20 years of painting. And I've settled on these very special 9 to 10 paint colors that I use for almost all my painting. And the reason why I love them so much is because you can paint color into color into color and they won't make mud, and they make the most beautiful granulations, and it makes them almost look like they're glowing. And I really don't need many more paint colors than what is on this palette for most of my paintings, and that includes painting portraits and landscapes and cats and dogs and wildlife. I paint everything, almost everything, with just these colors. So I am going to do a deep dive into why I love these colors and how they play magically together. These specific colors just create magic together. So I'm going to share them with you, and my aha moment will come a little bit later in the video. But for those of you who are new to my channel, welcome. I'm Rachel Parker Varner, and I like to teach not just the how but the why of watercolor, so you move along your watercolor journey a lot faster. A lot of my tips apply to any medium that involves color. And so I hope you'll enjoy all the bonus tips that you will find in this video, and all my videos are chock full of little treats that I sprinkle throughout my video to reward those of you who watch to the very end, because I appreciate that so much. If you would like to follow me more closely, there are 2 free ways. That's 4. There's 2 free ways to do that. You can follow me for free on my Patreon. And so whenever I make a new post or whatever, I post several things that are free to my members, and you'll get an email. So you got to be sure to join with an email that you check so that you get those alerts. So I will make it worth your time to do so. So join my Patreon for free so you can keep up with all my watercolor shenanigans, and there's a lot of them. And also join my free Facebook group. And on my Facebook group, you can post your paintings, and at this time, I'm still able to comment on every post people make. And I will put those links here. There will be more links at the end. There's going to be links in the description and in the comments. And if you would like to join me to learn from me more in depth, I have a library that you would get instant access to. Almost 200 paintings, in fact, depending on what tier you join. But I'm not going to talk about my paid offerings right now because I want to jump into this video. I'll put that at the end of the video for those of you who are interested in learning more about how to join my paid offerings, which if you like to paint loose, dreamy animals, especially lots of cats, but lots of other things too, watch the end of this video and I'll explain more about my paid offerings. This opera color is amazing. It granulates out so beautifully, and it's this hottest, brightest pink that you can imagine. So this opera granulates out and it makes these beautiful effects. And that's how, you get these beautiful glowing effects that you see here. It's just so beautiful. I don't know if you can see it in this light. And opera is one of them that granulates out and creates just these little points of gorgeous hot pink in a sea of blue or orange or whatever you drop it in with. I have to warn you, this opera, I can't resist it, but there is a problem with it. There is. And that is that it is not light fast. So if you use this Holbein opera color and you plan on hanging your painting in the sun, just know that it will fade over time. But if you spray it with UV fixative, Krylon makes a great one. Krylon. You can spray it with Krylon and it won't fade. So there is a way around it. You can also frame it with UV resistant glass, whatever works best for you. All right, let's move on to my red. I have been on a mission for years to find the perfect red, and I found it, I would say, I don't know, 6 or 7 years ago. It's this M-gram Naphthol red. Now, for those of you who paint with me, you know I like to have colors that don't stain too much because I do a lot of lifting and scrubbing, and I put something down and I take some of it back up to make soft magical transitions and all kinds of interesting effects. And you can't do that with staining paint. So I try to keep almost all my palette pretty much non-staining paints, and it's hard to find a non-staining red. Now, M-gram Naphthol red stains a little bit, but nothing like some of the other reds like alizarin crimson is so staining and strong. The other thing I like about it is it mixes beautifully with both blue and yellow, meaning it's a pretty pure primary red. It can go cool or warm. It's right there in the middle, in the sweet spot of a primary color. And so it mixes beautifully with yellows to make really pretty oranges, and it mixes really beautifully with blues, especially my granulating blues, and they separate out so beautifully, and they just glow. When you paint purples from a mix of this red and granulating blues, which we're about to get to. But it's also transparent. Where are you gonna find a transparent color that's also non-staining? It can be really hard. I don't know. This might be the only one, folks. I'm sure there's other ones, but this color is amazing. I mean, there's cadmium red, but cadmium red is kind of chalky and it gets really heavy. This is really transparent, and it just glows on the paper. The other amazing thing about this particular M-gram Naphthol red is that it has a high diffusion rate. What is a high diffusion rate? It means that when you wet your paper and then you drop this red color onto it, it explodes like a firework across the paper. So why is that so cool? Because say you have a bunch of cobalt blue that you've painted, and then you drop some of this red into that, and it will explode into that color and intermingle with it, and just as it dries, you'll see the glow, the granulation, and the glow of them intermixing and mingling in the most beautiful way. So why is it important to have transparent color as opposed to opaque color? Well, watercolor in its best form of itself is really transparent. You can see the layers underneath, glow up through the layers that you paint on top. So it's just the most beautiful effect, and watercolor does that unlike any other medium. So if you really want to have a watercolor looking style, you really want to have transparent paints that glow up through each other, through the layers. Like it's almost like painting with layers of saran wrap. It's just a gorgeous effect. But to get that effect, you need to use more transparent leaning colors like this M-gram Naphthol red. Now, not all my colors are transparent, but we'll get to that too. All right, my next color up is Lamp Black. And this color, I've made whole videos about this too. My journey with Lamp Black started with my black cat Sadie, that I wanted to learn to paint with these fluffed out, furred out edges. And I learned through going on that journey that no other paint color furs out like this Lamp Black by Daniel Smith. Also, by the way, Sumi Ink does the same thing because they have the same pigment in them. And so I discovered this Lamp Black through that journey, and I wanted really furred out soft edges. And I have a whole video you have to watch. It's in my binge list. By the way, I will put a whole list of videos that you just have to watch. They're just so amazing. I will put those binge worthy videos in a list in my comments. And one of them will be this chick video where I painted this really fluffy chick that it just furred out in the most gorgeous way. And it's because of the special properties of this Lamp Black when you paint it wet and wet. It's really cool and really fun to play with. But the other thing that I like about Lamp Black is that A common problem with black paint in the watercolor world is it has a large drying shift. What is a drying shift? It's when your paint dries, and as it dries, it gets lighter and grayer. Now, getting grayer for black isn't a problem, but getting lighter is a very common problem among black watercolor paints. And lamp black has one of the smallest drying shifts of any of the black paints that I've tried. And so that is another thing that makes this lamp black so special, is that you can get it really black, really super dark black. And that's sometimes really hard to do. And that's why so many artists often, one of the reasons why so many artists often mix their own blacks, which is a discussion for a whole other day. That's a whole rabbit hole. But suffice it to say, this is a great lamp. This is a great black if you need a really dark black. And also, if you want to play with wet and wet, furred out, fun effects, so much fun. I got lots of tutorials about it too. All right, the next color that you see on my palette is cerulean blue. This is another one I very rarely use. This is an earth pigment. What's an earth pigment? An earth pigment is more opaque. It's made from a natural mineral also. And so it's usually a lot grayer than most of your other paint colors. So it's not as transparent. It's more opaque. Usually they're granulating, which can be gorgeous. I mean, you could paint a sky with cerulean blue and maybe one other color. It will be gorgeous. But if you mix, like what I'm talking about with the trick that I'm going to tell you about, where you paint a lot of colors onto a wet piece of paper and you drop in an earth pigment, that's where you start getting mud. So that is one of the side tips that I want to give you, is that when you're painting all these colors together, and you're trying to get a really interesting granulation effect with a lot of different colors and have them all kind of mixed together, but all glow and just have this gorgeous effect. If you drop an earth pigment into that mix, it will create mud pretty quickly. So that's why I'm careful with cerulean blue. One, because it dries really light, so it's hard to get colors dark enough with cerulean blue, but it's a good way to cool down a color if you're just mixing it with one other color. But if you mix it with 3 or more colors, you start getting mud. And that's true of all the earth pigments. Some of the other pigments are burnt sienna, raw sienna, burnt umber, the siennas, the umbers, the ochres. Those are all earth pigments. So if they have those words in them, just know they are earth pigments, and you've got to be careful with them for that reason. They are very useful. I used to have burnt sienna on my palette. That's one of the colors that I've taken off because I found a replacement. Going to tell you about that soon and why I replaced it. So I don't use cerulean much. I know it's a beautiful color. And leave me a comment if you love cerulean and how you like to use it. I'd love to hear. Okay, so next we have cobalt blue. And I don't use this color enough either. But cobalt blue is a nice medium valued blue. There's light blue, cerulean. There's medium blue, cobalt. And your dark blue is, my favorite dark blue is ultramarine. Again, I'm getting ahead of myself, but this is another little side tip I want to give you that people really love this tip. Is that if you have problems getting your values accurate, here's a little trick. If you're mixing a color that happens to have blue in it, if you want a light valued color, mix the blue into it. If you want a medium valued color, mix it with cobalt blue, which is a beautiful, transparent, yet granulating paint. And if you want a dark mix, throw some French ultramarine in for a very rich mix of lots of different colors. So that's a good way to make it easier to get your values right, because remember, values are the workhorses of a painting and color steals all the glory. I heard that quote recently on a Tom Shepard video, and I don't think he made that quote up, but it's a quote that's been floating around a lot lately. I've seen it a lot lately. Let me repeat that. Even though we're talking about colors, colors aren't the most important thing in a realistic yet dreamy painting. The most important thing is, 1, an accurate drawing. Number 2, the most important thing is getting your values right. And so I am actually working on another video for y'all that's free about how to get your values right. So stay tuned for that. That's coming up on my channel, so be sure to subscribe. But anyway, let's talk a little bit more about cobalt blue before we move on, because it is almost like an earth pigment. In fact, it might be an earth pigment. But because I do notice it kind of grays things down, but it's just so beautiful. It's just this medium valued blue that it granulates out in this special, like, what word would I have? It's almost like flocculating, like the granulation looks like flakes, small little tiny flakes. It's just so pretty, and I don't use it enough. So this is a gorgeous blue. I can't live without it, but I don't use it nearly as much as my next color. My next color that is the #1 paint color that I cannot live without. I can live out without all these other colors. I use this color so much, ultramarine blue. That's just my color. I use it to mix all different kinds of beautiful greens and beautiful purples that granulate out and separate out, because yes, folks, it also granulates out. If you mix it with a lot of water, you can make a light blue. If you mix it with a medium amount of milk consistency water, you get a medium blue. If you just mix a tiny little bit of water into it, you get this deep, rich, stunning, granulating, gorgeous blue. It's just my workhorse color. It is the #1 color I love so much. Moving right along, are y'all ready for my new favorite color? It's not my workhorse, but I love this color. It is an amazing addition to my palette, and it has replaced burnt sienna. Now, I used to love burnt sienna because burnt sienna is an earth pigment, but if you paint burnt sienna on a piece of paper with a lot of water, it is very transparent and gorgeous. If you mix burnt sienna with another color, it granulates out and makes the most gorgeous effects. It's beautiful. Yes, it is. But add a third color, even a fourth color, it starts muddying everything up. So I learned this by mistake. I was looking for an orange that was really bright, because when I mixed my yellow with my red, I still wasn't happy with how bright it was. So I went on a little hunt for an orange, and what I found was Daniel Smith Transparent Pyrrole Orange. I've tried Core Pyrrole Orange, and it's chalky. I don't know why, but Daniel Smith Transparent Pyrrole Orange is amazing. It's transparent. It's not an earth pigment. So when you mix it with 3 or 4 other colors that work well together as well, what you get is magic glow. Oh my gosh, it's so pretty. Let me show you. It's just so pretty. So like in here, oh my Lord, I don't know if you can see it. This is pyrrole orange and blue. So what is supposed to happen when you mix complementary colors together? They're supposed to make gray. Blue and orange are complements. I mixed them together here. Pyrrole, transparent pyrrole orange, and blue. Does that look gray? No, it's glowing like it has life from within. Ah, it's so crazy. I love this color so much. It's just so pretty. And when I slashed some green into it and some yellow, did it get muddy? It did not. It just got magical. It got more magical. Thank you, Transparent Pyrrole Orange, for coming in my life. Oh my word, it's beautiful. So, and then look at this green, how it just vibrates. They're all vibrating together. By the way, be sure to watch my color theory video about making your colors glow. But this is one of the reasons why complementary colors make each other glow. Here's another cool quote that I've been hearing a lot lately, which is, a color is dead without its complement. So if you put a yellow in a painting, you need to put a purple somewhere, or even a blue. They can be across the color wheel from each other and still complement each other, even if they're not perfect complements, I've found. But like, look at what happens when you get the right colors together that are complementary to each other. They make each other glow when they're intermixed together if you use the right colors that granulate out and just, oh, it's so pretty. What a pretty effect. This is one of the new things that I'm playing with in my paintings. So see, I'm on a journey. So I take you on my journey. On my Patreon, let me just give a little plug to my Patreon too, just real quick on my paid tutorials, is that I don't show you step by step in my tutorials exactly like I practice the painting and then just show you what works. I show you being a real artist, meaning experimenting, trying new things. Sometimes it's ugly, sometimes it's pretty. I show you how I fix most of those problems, because painting is just a series of solving problems. And so if I don't show you that process, I'm not setting you up to be an artist who understands that that's what's going to happen. Just because your painting gets into the ugly stage doesn't mean you can't paint. It just means that's part of the artistic process, and you've got to work your way out of it. You got to problem solve. So you see me problem solve, so you learn a lot of my ways of fixing things. So one, you can learn those techniques, those fixing techniques. And two, I hope what you pick up from that is that you have to learn how to problem solve, because I can't solve every problem that you come across. So I want you to know that it's not that you don't have talent. It's just that you've got to work through the problems, and that's okay. And don't panic. It doesn't mean you don't have any talent. Okay, I got to get off my soapbox. I can go on. If you want to hear some more of that kind of thing, watch my latest viral hit, for me anyway. The title is called Stop, Don't Abandon Watercolor. I've got so many good tips in that. It's been really popular. People really love my tips in that, so be sure to watch that. So just a little bit more about transparent pyro orange. It has replaced burnt sienna for me. Burnt sienna plus ultramarine blue used to make this beautiful, it still does actually. It makes this beautiful, luscious dark. And if I really wanted a super dark that granulates out together but still makes this gorgeous super dark, I would probably turn to my burnt sienna if I was just using burnt sienna and ultramarine blue. But and burnt sienna plus ultramarine blue is a magical mix. You can make all different kinds of colors, from chocolate brown to tan to a warm blue to a cool orange. And it's just a very versatile mix that I'm not saying you should abandon. But I just have found that I don't need that mix anymore, because if you mix transparent pyro orange with ultramarine blue, it also makes brown mixes that glow together beautifully. So you paint a lot of fur, this is fun to play with, and you add a little bit more blue, and then you get a blue leaning orange or a brown, and then you add a little orange and you get a more warm leaning brown, and you mix those warm leaning oranges with the cool leaning oranges within fur or bark or whatever brown thing you're making. It will make them dance and play together just so beautifully. So that's why I like using transparent pyro orange, because it's a brighter orange, so it makes brighter mixes with my ultramarine blue. And as I just showed you, when they mix together, they just make each other glow so beautifully. It's just absolutely gorgeous. Another color that took years to find the perfect yellow. I had many years of playing with different yellows, and I didn't like them. They were either too heavy or too chalky, like the cadmiums to me are too chalky, or they weren't a good enough primary where they mixed well with both blue and red. I just had a hard time for years until I found Holbein Aureolin. Now, I know the naysayers out there will say, Aureolin, it's not light fast. That's true. Many paint manufacturers call their Aureolin, and they use this pigment that is not light fast. But Holbein Aureolin is light fast, and it's this gorgeous primary yellow that it's another workhorse, and it mixes so well with the rest of these colors that I love this yellow. Now, Indian yellow is really fun too. It granulates out, and I would love to play with that more, but there's only so much time in the day to do all these fun color experiments. And that's one of the reasons why you want to limit your palette to a group of 9 or 10 colors, so that as you paint with them over the years, yes, years, folks, you learn how they play together. If you have 50 paint colors that you're trying to juggle, you can't learn about any of them in depth enough to be effective with using them to get some of these glowing effects. It's just too confusing and overwhelming. That's why I would encourage you to limit your palette to just 9 or 10 colors. And you could start with these and really have a lot of fun. All right, next up on my palette is one of the few, it might be the only one in fact, that's really chalky. And that is Daniel Smith Permanent Green Light. But I found that when I drop it into a wash, see, this is all wet. So I put orange, I put blue, I put yellow, all in the same painting session. I didn't dry it in between. I let all these colors intermix. And then when I dropped in some green, can you see how gorgeous it is? And I dropped in some green in the corner of his eye to just give a little bit of coolness in the corner of his eye. I dropped in a little bit of green here. It's just, I don't know if you can see it, but it just granulates out so pretty. So because it's chalky, but it's a bright color, it holds, for the most part, it holds its color. It doesn't get muddy. It holds that beautiful green color. And because it's a little granulating too, it intermixes with the other granulating paints. And this one just doesn't get muddy as much as you would expect. And it's a great little like highlight color. Another one I recently learned about is Andrew's turquoise will do the same thing. So that's a color I want to buy and kind of play with. And also I would guess that the PB17 sky blue, neon blue would do this same thing. I need to play with it. You can only try so many things. So that's why I like this Daniel Smith Permanent Green. And it's like a really nice it's a really nice base green, because if you haven't noticed, so many tube greens are staining. And like sap green, sap green is gorgeous, yes, but it's so staining that you can't fix it at all. You can't lift it. You can't scrub it much. You can some, but it's just not enough. It's not enough for me. I need more out of my green. So I chose this green, which is not as staining, and you can add a little red to it to make it look more like a forest green. You can add more yellow to it to make it a pale green. And this green is like a really electric young green, you know, like the color of fresh new greenery that's still baby green. It's that almost neon green. So you can calm it down a lot by adding a little bit of red, and then it makes it a more natural color green. You add more blue to it, it turns into a deep, rich forest green. So it's like a good base green too that I like to get a lot of different greens by adding some yellow or a little red or a little blue or all those colors to get a nuanced, different color green. So it's just a good base green. It's just a good color to have on your palette, a place to start from. So I love it for its granulation effect, its ability to hold its color even when you drop it into a bunch of other colors, and its brightness. It's just a really fun color. I need it in my life. I just have to have it. Okay, next up on my palette is Winsor Green Gold. And I haven't been using it a lot lately, but it is a pure pigment color, and even though it's called green gold and it does have a green gold look to it, it surprisingly mixes well with the other two primaries, both red and blue, and it makes some really interesting mixes. And I would love to play with this color a lot more and play with it in different mixes because it's a unique color. And when I dropped the Winsor Green Gold into all these other colors, it held its own. And so you can still see, like right in here is some Winsor Green Gold. Right in here is some Winsor Green Gold. Just seeing this in person, it's just so beautiful how these colors are all glowing together all at the same time. And Winsor Green Gold plays well with my palette. And I do need to use it more. I almost always reach for it when I'm painting eyes. Like I paint a lot of cats. So a lot of cat eyes, the base color of a lot of cat eyes for me is Winsor Green Gold. It's perfect, but it would be gorgeous like painting owl eyes or wolf eyes, like really magical glowing eye color. It's just perfect for that. But it also would be beautiful in landscape applications, which I do have a few landscapes in my library, but not too many. I'm not a landscape painter. I like to play with landscapes though, but they're hard, y'all. Okay, so that is my palette in a nutshell. Yes, we went all the way around. And so I use these colors 95% of the time, maybe 98% if you want to get nitpicky. But the one time that I depart from these colors is often, not often. I don't paint snow a lot, but when I want really good cauliflower effects or really good salt effects, like I just painted an Arctic fox. This is a super advanced, not almost not even an intermediate. I would call it more of a demonstration than a tutorial. You will learn a ton if you watch this tutorial of an Arctic fox. But one of the things that I did is I painted the background with phthalo blue mixed into my other colors because I wanted really strong wintry effects like cauliflower effects. And I wanted to use saran wrap and salt, and phthalo blue just seems to work way better for those effects than my ultramarine blue and cobalt. It's hard to get them to cauliflower out to react to salt dramatically like phthalo blue does. So phthalo blue is really staining though. That's why I don't like it, because it doesn't work with my fixing techniques that I really love to use. So you won't find phthalo blue on my palette. And what's more is I'm really very, I make a mess, y'all. I don't know how else to say it. I make a mess. And so somehow I'll drag my hand across dry phthalo blue paint and it's still sticky and it gets here. And then all of a sudden I've smeared it across my painting or something like that. And I've just made a mess, and phthalo blue will take over your entire palette. It is a bully color. It is so strong. Now, when you paint with a phthalo blue in, for dark, rich, transparent effects, yes, it's amazing. It's also really scary for me, so I just don't use it a lot. But there is a place in this world for phthalo blue. It's just not in my style much. So anyway, that is my whole palette. Oh, I almost forgot. I want to show you this really cool. Okay, where's my book? Here it is. All right, I promised you this cool bonus tip that I just recently rediscovered. I read Robert Wade's watercolor book. In the days before the internet, when I was learning, there wasn't much on the internet to help. You go to the library or you buy a book. So Robert Wade's book, I learned so much from him, and it's a loss to the watercolor community that he is now the late Robert Wade. But let me find this. Okay, here it is. So here he's talking about glazes. And so he says that you hear this myth. He calls it a myth that watercolors, if you use a lot of different colors together all in the same wash, they'll create mud. He says, not true. You can paint all these different colors and not create mud. He says, try an experiment. So do a wash over your entire paper. First wash, he says, use raw sienna. Now you don't have to use these exact colors. Like after I read that, I'm like, oh, I should try that with these colors in this application I'm painting of my son Parker, which is obviously not, it's like, this is just the first wash. Before you judge me. So first wash, he says, try raw sienna. Then it's still wet, drop in cobalt blue. And then third wash, permanent rose. Does he stop there? No. He puts cerulean blue, which I find hard to believe because that's an earth pigment. But okay, Robert Wade. And then he puts quinacridone gold, which is a crazy strong color. And then he puts a really strong color, Winsor violet, which Winsor violet used to be on my palette. And I didn't like how synthetic it looks. And I love so much more mixing my purple from cobalt and or ultramarine blue with my red. It just makes such a gorgeous flocculated out purple. It makes Winsor violet to me looks so plastic, I guess is the word. But okay, that's what he says. And he shows this painting that he did that, and it's just gorgeous. Now I was like, okay, I'll try your funny little trick. this is what I got. So yes, the colors are granulating out pretty, but to me it does look a little muddy. But I used kind of a riff on that idea with these colors. And I used, in this wash, which I did last night, literally I'm still so excited about how beautiful this did, ultramarine blue, pyro orange, aureolin, Windsor green gold, little dots of that permanent green light, a little bit of M-gram Naphthol red, a little bit of opera, I do think. All my favorite colors that I just talked about basically are in here. Maybe not cobalt, but cobalt would be so gorgeous with this. Cobalt might be even prettier because it's more transparent than ultramarine, but it granulates out gorgeous. So I don't know. Y'all try this with your colors and try. I'm not sold completely, but I understand what he's saying. To when you slosh a bunch of different colors on, they can do beautiful things. But I think you have to use the right colors. And I just know that my palette that I just showed y'all can do beautiful things. Not every single time, because watercolor does have a mind of its own. That's why we have the channel, The Mind of Watercolor, which is an amazing channel. I love that channel. All right, let me tell you now a little bit about my Patreon. The way that I look at my Patreon is I myself am on a learning journey, and I share what I'm learning, and I'm always learning new things. So there's always something new in every new tutorial. I feel like I haven't even done a tutorial yet with these new insights I've learned from this. I mean, every new, okay, let me give you an example. This is one of my newest tutorial. I painted this on this is 140 pound. Okay, I'm confused. But this is 140 pound paper, but I did something new with this. I soaked it in the tub and I got it really wet. I got the front wet and the back wet. And then I stuck it to some plexiglass and painted all these soft areas that you see on pretty wet paper. So that was a new experiment for me, getting everything so wet on the front and the back of the painting. Okay, so new information I'm learning, I'm passing on. This, I haven't created my tutorial yet for this. I'm so bad at doing super beginner tutorials. I haven't been a beginner for a long time. I think that's why it's hard for me. I do have super beginner tutorials. Beginners have told me they get a lot out of my beginner tutorials, but I painted this for my beginners. This isn't on my Patreon yet, but I am editing it, so it's coming. So this will be upcoming. This is another fun little painting that I did on hot press of a very cute little field mouse on a flower. This is upcoming. And I didn't really try anything too much new with this one. It's just fun. And I tried to make it as easy to paint as possible so even beginners could have some success with it. So that's coming. This is a tutorial I did recently. This is actually on hot press. The tutorial that I did is on cold press of this tuxedo cat. So that is already up on my Patreon. That's one of my newer ones. And you learn a lot about how to make, even though you have all these colors in the painting, how do you make them all hang together well? That's a good lesson that I put in this tutorial. So there's a good lesson. This is my painting of Sassy, the horse me and my members saved from the glue factory. And there's so many good lessons in this painting. This was a 3-hour painting marathon, and I'm still editing this. I might make some of the footage faster for more intermediate to advanced painters, but there's so many lessons in this. In fact, this halter I made hot pink. I hated it, and then I erased it completely and then made it a different color to tie in with this background. And so I throw in so much information that you can use no matter what you're painting, like painting this transparent wash. How beautiful could you make your flowers using these ideas? Or how glowing a portrait, or a glowing, oh my gosh, I'd love to paint a sky with a sunset using these same techniques. So these techniques that I teach you will translate well to so many different things. So, for example, I had someone recently join, Kathy, and she said she joined by mistake. And then she didn't want to paint animals, but she watched one of my tutorials and she's like, I'm so glad I joined. I learned so much, because in my tutorials, I teach you not just how to paint a cat or a dog or whatever it is I'm painting. I give you the how, but also the why, so you can apply those principles to whatever you're painting, and specifically a lot of fixes, how to fix paintings, how to finish paintings, how to get them through the ugly stage. And a lot of tutorials don't show the ugly stage, or they, I know a lot of these instructors, they'll paint something 3 times and then make the tutorial. I paint something the first time, just totally green, and I show you how I get to the end of that painting process by adjusting and responding intuitively and making those fixes and making those mistakes and showing you how to work through all that. So I think that's what makes my tutorials a little different. I do that because I want to set you up as an artist who can create your own painting and not freak out in the middle of it and abandon ship because you think that you don't have any talent, or you think you ruined it, when really you just need to keep pushing through. In fact, I really believe that it's more of a myth that you can overwork a painting. I say overwork that painting. Try. Keep working on it. And then at the end, if you still have a mess, you can restart and do it again and apply so much of what you've learned from the first try to the second try. And that's why artists work in series. That's why artists do studies. It's part of the artistic process. It's normal. So I share all that with you. So if you are interested in that, you can go and look and see what I have available in my tutorial library of almost 200 tutorials now. If you go to rachelstudio.com/Patreon index, that's on my website, not on my Patreon, but is a visual index that the links will take you back to Patreon. But also, if you want to just see all the paintings I've done as tutorials, you can look at my visual index and see what I have and see if they interest you. I've got a few landscapes, a few portraits, butterflies, a few flowers, lots of cats, okay? Lots of cats. Cats are my totem muse animal. They have chosen me whenever I have, more often than not, when I have an artistic success, like I won my first national watercolor award with a cat painting. Most of my cat paintings sell. It's just cats are my totem. They just chose me. I didn't necessarily choose them. I love cats, but I really love paintings of other things too. But it's just, I have a lot of cats, suffice it to say. So if you want to paint loose, dreamy cats, dogs, horses, wildlife, that is kind of my focus on my tutorials. But just like Kathy says, even if you want to paint landscapes, you're going to learn a lot about how to paint watching my tutorials. So I highly recommend them, I'll have to say. So you can check out my Patreon index to see what I offer. I also have on my Patreon, once you join as a paid member, you can go to my collections tab, and that's another way to find tutorials. And then you can also, and I have this up for free as well, my list of tutorials from hardest to easiest. So I have 3 different ways to find a tutorial that suits your level of painting and also what subject you're interested in. So you can start with my more beginner-oriented tutorials, which I would say I have about 20, and then a lot of intermediate tutorials, a lot of advanced tutorials. So it runs the gamut of beginner, intermediate, advanced, lots of different subjects. So if you think about joining, I would encourage you to join for a year, and that way you pay for 10 months and you get 2 months free. So that kind of locks in your savings by joining for a year. And I also recommend joining at the $13 tier, because in the $13 tier, you get access to almost all my tutorials. And in fact, I'm simplifying my Patreon. I've gotten rid of my $3 tier and my $5 tier, and now I have a $9 tier, which gives you access to all my new tutorials. And then my $13 tier gives you access to almost my entire Patreon library of almost 200 tutorials. And then my $30 tier is if you really want to learn super in depth and join my Zoom meeting, which I have once a week, almost once a week, with my $30 tier members. And they can also get in-depth critiques from me that you can email me your picture and I'll give you an in-depth critique. So I'm a little more hands-on with my $30 tier. So you can decide what tier is best for you. If it was me, I'd join the $13 tier. That would be my suggestion. So I hope that explains a little bit about my Patreon. And please message me if you have any questions or need help. I am here to explain things. And if you tell me what level painter you are and what you want to paint, I can make suggestions about tutorials that would be a good fit for you. Because it's a lot to navigate. 200 tutorials, that's a lot. So when you join my Patreon, I would suggest accessing my library instead of waiting for my new tutorial. Because I've got so much to watch. You could spend a whole year just watching all my tutorials that I've done over the years. And it's such a good deal because this is like 5 or 6 years of my full-time work that a lot of these tutorials are at the level of a course, which you would pay hundreds of dollars for. But for just $13 a month, you get access to a whole library. It's like a watercolor playground. So it's such a good deal. And it supports a living artist. And I appreciate those of you who have stayed with me over the years. This is what makes my dreams come true. It makes it possible for me to paint and to provide free YouTube content because of the support I get from my Patreon members. So thank you to those of you who support me financially too. It means so much to me. But anyway, I've rambled on enough, and I think it's time for you to go paint. So I hope you picked up a lot of good tips from today's video. Be sure to subscribe to learn not just the how, but the why of watercolor, and I'll see you next time. Now go watercolor your world. Bye, everybody.